Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, Department of State Services confirms arrest of former chairman of Pension Reform Task Team, Abdulrasheed Maina, as DSS claims his son pulled a gun on officials at the point of arrest. Tribunal upholds elections of Governor Tambuwal of Sokoto, Simon Lalong of Plateau, and Abdullahi Ganduje of Kano, affirms their victory as duly elected governors. Senate launches investigation into failure to review provisions of Production Sharing Contract Act in the oil and gas sector over loss of about 7 trillion naira over a period of 20 years. And U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo admits he was part of the phone call in which President Donald Trump asked Ukrainian president to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden.
On Business News tonight, Central Bank sanctions 12 lenders for failing to meet minimum loan-to-deposit ratio of 60%.
And on Sports News tonight, defending champions Nigeria drawn against Cote d'Ivoire, Zambia and South Africa in Group B of the 2019 CAF Under-23 Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt.
After 4 years of evading arrest, the Department of State Services today confirmed the arrest of Mr. Abdulrasheed Maina, the erstwhile chairman of the Pension Reform Task Team. The DSS says its officials arrested Mr. Maina at a hotel in Abuja and in company of his 20-year-old son, Faisal, who is a final-year student at the Canadian University of Dubai. His son reportedly resisted arrest and is also accused of brandishing a pistol at security agents. Items recovered from Mr. Maina include a pistol with live ammunition, a bulletproof Range Rover SUV, a BMW saloon car, foreign currencies, a Phantom 7 drone, and sensitive documents. The DSS, however, said it has handed over Mr. Maina to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for interrogation. The EFCC had in 2017 declared Mr. Maina wanted for alleged complicity in the over 2 billion naira pensions biometrics contract scam in the office of the head of civil service of the Federation. To electoral matters, the SOKOTO State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal today upheld the victory of Governor Aminu Tambuwal of the People's Democratic Party in the March governorship polls. In a unanimous judgment delivered by a three-man panel, the tribunal dismissed the petition filed by the All Progressives Congress and its governorship candidate, Ahmed Aliyu, over failure of the petitioners to produce credible evidence to prove their case. Our correspondent, Amaka Okafo, has more.
Jubilation as the Sokoto State Governorship Election Tribunal dismissed the petition challenging the election of Governor Aminu Tambuwal of Sokoto State. In a lead judgment delivered by Justice Abbas Abdullahi, the panel held that the relevant witnesses were not called, while those who testified based their evidence on hearsay. Specifically, the tribunal held that the witness statement, recorded in Hausa and translated into English language by an interpreter, was not tendered, adding that their evidence during cross-examination was at variance with their pleadings in the petition. The tribunal also held that the witnesses admitted that they voluntarily signed the result sheets from the polling units to the ward level as agents of the petitioners and not under duress. Justice Abdullahi in the judgment also rejected some of the documentary evidence tendered by the petitioners on the grounds that the documents were not properly certified as required by law. Although the petitioners pleaded voters' register, the tribunal said that there was no attempt to link the register with the result sheets that were tendered during the hearing.
The tribunal rightly held that the petition is incompetent and dismissed same. So I think it's one of the finest that we can witness in this era.
Who labored so hard to produce this result, so we are so elated that this result is available to cheer us up.
However, counsel to the petitioners says they will explore the right to appeal.
None that is against us does not mean all is lost. If for anything, it's just a challenge of meeting up the time within which to file our own appeal.
The SOKOTO state governorship election was declared inconclusive after 75,403 votes were cancelled, a figure that was higher than the 3,413 votes margin that Governor Tambuwal led the other candidates with. A rerun poll conducted on March 23rd saw Tambuwal emerge victorious with a slim margin of 342 votes. Amaka Okafo, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, similar victories were recorded in Kano and Plateau states as the governorship tribunals upheld the victories of Governor Abdulrasheed Ganduje and Governor Simon Lalong, respectively. While the tribunal ruled that the Kano PDP petition was faulty as it did not follow the Electoral 2010 Act, judges in the Plateau Tribunal unanimously threw out the PDP petition on the grounds that it was weak along the lines of law.
On a day like this, not even the weather can stop this contending party faithful from being here. It's Judgment Day at the Election Petition Tribunal, sitting in Jos, the Plateau State capital. The case pending is that of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, contesting the victory of Governor Simon Lalong at the election held in March this year. Mixed looks of confidence and uncertainty are evident in the courtroom, as all present are aware that the final decision rests with the presiding judge. And soon enough, the judgment is passed. And from the comments of both counsels, it's not difficult to tell who the happier party is.
From the judgment itself, you can see that you can already formulate many grounds of appeal, because in some cases we found out that some of the findings by the tribunal were not in sync with the conclusions that they reached.
For us, we are very happy at the outcome. We also commend the petitioners for testing our victory through the law. We have gotten a double validation of our victory today.
In Kano State, the mood at the court is anxious. Supporters of the state governor, Abdulrasheed Ganduje, and those opposing his victory have come to know the fate of their candidates. A short while later, music fills the air and it's celebration time. But for which side?
I want to urge you all that we should celebrate peacefully, because we in APC are law-abiding citizens and we have the concern of our people in our mind.
Judgments like this, normally we have to digest it. But our fear is that the INEC and the courts maybe are defining election again in this country.
Victories at the tribunals should put the minds of the winners to rest. But with the determination of those who feel hard done by the decision of the courts, this may not be the last heard of the matter.
The Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, says the federal government now has unconditional permission of a commercial court in the United Kingdom to appeal against the $9.6 billion arbitration award in favor of P&ID. Mr. Lai Mohammed was part of the six-man delegation to the UK last week to contest the August judgment, which was in favor of P&ID. The Minister of Information says the judge also granted the federal government's plea for a stay of execution on any enforcement of the earlier judgment until the appeal court rules on the matter.
The federal government now has an unconditional permission to appeal against the decision of the commercial court recognizing and converting the $9.6 billion arbitration award in favor of P&ID to a domestic judgment. The Nigerian government won a leave of the commercial court to appeal the judgment, which P&ID had vehemently resisted. The court granted the federal government unconditional permission to appeal against its own decision, and the court rejected P&ID's argument that there was no basis for any appeal. The judge also granted the federal government a stay of any enforcement proceedings pending the determination of any appeal. The judge accepted the federal government's evidence as to the weak financial status of PNID and the fact that it was nothing more than an offshore company with no established business. The federal government looks forward to its day in court, in the Court of Appeal, where it is confident that it will receive a fair hearing of its case and that the order permitting enforcement of the arbitral award will be set aside.
From legal matters, we turn our attention to the National Assembly, where the Senate has asked its committees on petroleum, finance and judiciary to investigate the reasons for the failure to review the Production Sharing Contract Act, which has so far cost the country about 7 trillion naira over 20 years. The Senate's directive follows a motion by Senator Ifeanyi Ubah calling for an urgent review of the Act, as well as recovery of the additional revenue accrued from the federal government from production sharing contracts. Our correspondent, Linda Kigbe, has a report.
It's the first legislative session for the week, and the attention of the Senate is on the country's oil industry.
Observe that no review of the Act.
Senator Ifeanyi Ubah, who also happens to be a player in the petroleum sector, moves a motion calling the attention of the Senate to the huge losses amounting to 7 trillion naira, which Nigeria has suffered because of the failure of Parliament and the federal government to review the Production Sharing Contract Act. The Production Sharing Contract is a contractual arrangement for petroleum exploration and production, whereby the state, as owner of petroleum resources, engages a contractor to provide technical and financial services for exploration and production operations for an agreed share in profit after payment of royalty, costs and tax oil. Section 16 of the PSC Act stipulates that where the price of crude oil exceeds $20 per barrel, the Act will be reviewed to ensure that the share of the federal government in the additional revenue is adjusted to the extent that the PSCs shall be economically beneficial to the federal government.
Senate notes that Nigeria, having lost trillions of naira due to non-review of the PSC Act, stands to gain an additional sum of 30 billion monthly, 360 billion annually if the Act is reviewed and amended, which will boost our revenue base significantly.
According to senators, besides costing the country trillions of naira, the failure to review the Act every 15 years, as stipulated in the legislation, has cost Nigeria to also lose 350 billion naira to fund the 2019 budget.
In this year, Mr. President, they have put 160 billion. If this Act is not amended, for us to assess this money, it means that the budget deficit that we are going to get in 2020 will be beyond the 3% threshold as provided by the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And so it is very important for us to pass this motion so that we will be able to assess the 160 billion.
It's important that we as a Senate would develop a political will and come to a conclusion that it's not going to be another motion, that it is now that we are going to do something about this to save this country.
In the meantime, the bill for the amendment of the PSC Act is expected to be before the Senate on Thursday, October 3rd. And Senate President Ahmed Lawan promises that it will be given prompt passage. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
In part two after the break, we'll wrap up our series on Nigeria's independence anniversary with a focus on how the economy has fared in the last 59 years. Stay with us.